of a half a block or so. The house was beside a ditch, and in that ditch was the water that started with the spring melt. And so I took the canoe out there and I put my daughter in, back and forth we went. I have a hunch I was having more fun than she was. I told my wife it was fun for my daughter, and maybe it was. A few years later, we decided now we're in a different setting, different house. There's no water that's not frozen, and so we have a different canoe as well, because that first canoe was a heavy barge. This new canoe, we also have a son now, and he's just tiny. We put them both in the canoe, and I was towing them around the backyard with the rope and sliding them across the snow in the canoe. That was my son's first canoe ride. There wasn't an organ playing at the time. I liked the effect. And I think I was probably having more fun than the two of them, but maybe they were having as much fun as I was having. Another year, we flooded the entire backyard. It was a flat backyard, and we created a skating rink for all winter. That was delightful. Then there were the years in winter when Shelley would go out and build things like 10-foot rabbits in the snow with them and such. The kids would grow tired, and they would come in the house, and Shelley would still be out there building on these creatures. One year, it was the big snow fort with the PVC pipe going out of the top for air, and lanterns, oil lanterns inside, and a door, the whole works on it. That was a lot of fun too, and probably as much fun for me as for them. There's something about being with children that speaks of life, and that lets you do impractical, silly stuff. Now if I went out in the backyard and started building a snow fort in the middle of winter with no kids, people would look at me a bit strangely. I invite you to remember, and maybe I already have, some of your childhood memories or the memories with your children. And I invite you to remember that Jesus lived in a day where children were not regarded nearly as well most of the time. In a culture where a king set his soldiers loose to kill all the male toddlers, preschoolers, and babies. Literally, the Jewish people lived one story away from the cultures that surrounded them. Many of the cultures practicing human sacrifice, and in our scriptures we have this story of Abraham taking Isaac to Mount Moriah and discovering that wasn't the way the Jewish people were being called to go. And then we come to Jesus, and we see Jesus has a tender heart toward children. He heals a boy suffering from seizures, another boy who was ill unto death. He heals Jairus' daughter. He heals the daughter of a Phoenician woman. And when the disciples are in the midst of an argument about greatness, he pauses and he sees there's a child nearby, and he takes that child to him, and he says that the disciples have to learn to become, again, like children. And then when the disciples, right after that, try and stop the children from coming to Jesus, he scolds the disciples again and praises the children. And then the disciples stop children from coming to him again, and he does the same. And he says it would be better for you if a millstone were tied around your neck and you were thrown into the sea than if you cause one of the little ones to stumble and fall. And in a world where there's child abuse and childhood poverty and a childhood sex trade and childhood sweatshop slavery, it is a powerful thing to have a 9-by-4 window, or whatever the exact dimensions are, glowing as a reminder that God cares for children. There's an African greeting that still rings true to assess how life is going in a family and how life is going in a culture. And that greeting is simply, so how is it with the children? And if it's good with the children, it's good in the family. And if it's good with the children, it's good in the society. And if it is not, things aren't so bad. When we send a gift to eradicate malaria around the world, especially for the children, it is as simple as the message of the window. When we have the children come forward, or when we have Sunday school, the message is as simple as the message of the window. Jesus loves the little children of the world, and the vulnerable, and the orphans, and the homeless, and the widows. Jesus' way starts with the phrase, "Let the children come to me," and we will have that as part of our weekly experience now. But it's not just a story about the children coming to Jesus. "Let the children come to me" is inviting a whole new generation to Jesus. It is inviting new ways and new ideas. It is inviting new practices and new thoughts. It is about teaching, but it is always about learning. When the sanctuary was built, as I understand it, there was a lot of thought and a lot of prayer that went into the design. And a lot of the thought and prayer was kind of like the Quakers in their theology. "'Tis a gift to be simple." And so it was created as a simple space to be with God and to hear the word and to hear the music. And then over time, new people arrive and new ideas come. Churches can only grow with new people and new ideas. Churches can stay the same, but that becomes a group where everybody comes in, they all think the same, and pretty soon someone says, "Drink the Kool-Aid," and the whole group collapses. Or groups can allow new ideas and new thoughts to come in. Groups can teach, but they can also learn. And in that give and take, things happen, like the window that I get to look at. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, how come the congregation gets to look at windows and I don't? And this morning I'm standing up here now remembering, well, I do get to look at a window, so it's okay. And you get to look at a window. When I start dragging on, you get to look at a window. That is a good thing. My guess is that the stained glass that we have added will make an instant impression and an instant invitation upon the children of God who are most visual. Marianne Held mentioned that when she and her late husband Willard would go into homes, there would be times when Willard would disappear. Not completely disappear, but she would know where he went when she saw he was absent for a moment. And he'd be in the kitchen, because he was a cabinet builder. He'd be looking at the household's cabinets. He might be running a hand down them. He'd be checking if they're square, seeing what the finish was like, checking out the design. Each of us has things we love. And I can imagine there will be people in the congregation on a Sunday morning who are, in a sense, tracing the designs, looking at the cabinets, listening to the message of the windows, and holding that in their hearts because they are visual. I can imagine there may be a parent who has lost a child, and I can imagine that parent being healed little by little, week after week, by the image of Jesus welcoming the child.